Someone asked you today how you were doing, and for a fraction of a second, so small you might have missed it, something shifted, not on your face. Your face was already moving toward the answer, but underneath the face, in the place where truth forms before it decides whether to be spoken, something stirred. Some part of you wanted, briefly, to say something other than fine, and then the familiar thing happened. The smile arrived. The slightly self-deprecating, just tired, it's been a lot, that closes the door before anyone can push it further open. And then, this is the part to notice, you turned it around. You asked about them. How are they doing? What happened with that thing they mentioned? Because asking about them means not being asked about you. And not being asked means not having to find an answer to the question you are not ready to answer. Honestly, not yet, possibly not ever. You have been doing this for a very long time, not in every conversation, not with every person, but consistently, as a pattern so practiced it has become invisible to you. You are the one who holds things together. You are the person people come to when they are struggling. You know what to say and when to say nothing. You offer steadiness. You show up. And in building that life, quietly, without any single moment you could point to, you have become someone that no one comes to. Not because they don't care, because you have never let them understand that you might need them to. The tightening happens in your throat when someone offers genuine care. Not the casual, "How are you?" You can navigate that with your eyes closed. But when someone actually stops, actually looks at you and asks with real attention, "How are you really?" something closes. A faint alarm immediately managed. Something in you feels almost exposed by the quality of the attention. And so you deflect, you minimize. You laugh your own difficulty away before anyone can respond to it. You make it smaller, faster, lighter, so that no one has to carry any of it with you. And then you go home and you lie awake running through the list. And you handle it. Internally, alone, in the silence that belongs only to you. And the list never shortens. It only grows because you are the kind of person who keeps adding to it without ever setting any of it down. You stay up after everyone else has gone to sleep, not because there is anything left to do, but because the quiet is the only time the weight stops pretending to be manageable. In that quiet, things surface that you do not let surface during the day, and you sit with them, alone, and you handle them, the way you have always handled them, without telling anyone knowing that the handling was necessary. This is the quiet suffering of people who never ask for help, not the loud kind. Suffering that announces itself and asks for a response. This kind is quieter. It lives under competence. It hides behind capability. It is the exhaustion of someone who has been strong for so long that they have forgotten what it felt like before they started carrying all of this alone, and who has lived inside that forgetting long enough to mistake it for their actual nature. You are not strong because you never ask. You have been performing strength for so long that the performance has started to feel like the thing itself. That is what this is really about, not whether you are capable. You clearly are, but whether the capability has become a wall, and whether the wall, whatever it once protected, is now the very thing that keeps something essential out. It did not start as a wall, it started as a way to survive. Think back, not necessarily to a specific moment, but to the general shape of what you learned. At some point, needing something created a problem. Not because the need was wrong, but because the response to it was unreliable, or absent, or burdened with conditions that made asking feel more costly than not asking. At some point you understood, without being told directly, that your needs were inconvenient, that asking created discomfort in the people you needed to ask, that being in difficulty was a great deal for the people around you to hold, that handling things yourself was simply easier. For everyone, especially for them. And so you handled it. You handled it once and it worked. No one had to be burdened. No one had to be uncomfortable. You managed. And you discovered something important. being self-sufficient, produced a particular kind of approval. People called it strength. They said you were reliable, capable, the one they could count on, and you learned, not consciously but truly, that this was who you were supposed to be, that this was the version of you that earned its place in the people around it. This was not weakness, it was intelligence under pressure. You adapted to the conditions of the environment you were in. You found a way to be safe and valued, without exposing what you needed, without risking the particular disappointment of asking and receiving nothing, or less than nothing. That was a genuinely sophisticated response to a genuinely difficult set of circumstances. Do not hate yourself for it. Hatred is another cage. You learned what you learned for real reasons, under real conditions. The armor was built because something required armor. But here is where the intelligence becomes its own limitation. What protected you in one environment does not automatically serve you in a different one. The armor built for a particular kind of winter does not know that the season has changed. It keeps wearing itself. It keeps insisting the cold is coming. And the person inside it, warm, even overheated, is still not permitted to take it off. Strength is not the same as self-isolation. Independence is not the same as being unreachable. Capability is not the same as being obligated to carry everything alone. Reliability is not the same as never allowing yourself to need anything. These distinctions are not small. They are the entire distance between chosen resilience and a life of quiet, accumulated, unacknowledged suffering. Think of a wall built around a city. The wall was built because the threat was real, because what was outside could genuinely harm what inside. The people who built it were not afraid without cause. They were protecting something worth protecting. But time passes. The nature of the threat changes. The people who once came to take now come to bring, to trade, to offer what the city cannot grow within its own walls. And a city that cannot open its gates, that cannot receive, cannot exchange, cannot let in what it needs from outside, does not survive by being strong. It survives only until it exhausts what is already inside. And then it collapses inward, quietly, with its walls still standing perfectly intact. You are the city that has kept its gates closed because you cannot remember a time when they were open and nothing bad happened. Begin quietly. Think of one thing you are currently carrying that you have not told anyone. Not because there is no one, but because you decided without a conscious moment of choice, that this is not something you share. Notice that decision. Notice when it was made and under what circumstances. You do not have to change it today. Only see it clearly. It was a decision, not a law, not your nature. A decision made long ago, still running without being reviewed. And once you see how the armor was built, what it has cost over time becomes impossible to continue ignoring. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep does not fix. Not the tiredness of doing too much, though you have been doing too much. Something underneath that. The tiredness of holding a face together over a long period of time. The tiredness of managing, carefully and continuously, what is shown and what is not. The tiredness of being available to others in ways that you have never allowed others to be available to you. You handle it at 2 a.m. when you cannot sleep, and the weight of things you haven't said fills the quiet. You handle it in the car before you walk into whatever the day requires of you next. You handle it in the 5 minutes before you have to be present for someone else who needs something from you. You handle it in the middle of conversations, in the spaces between tasks, in the ordinary silences that fill an ordinary day. You handle it everywhere and always, and you have been handling it for so long that handling it has become your understanding of yourself. Not a practice you chose, but the person you are. And no one knows. That is the particular texture of this loneliness. You are surrounded sometimes by people who genuinely care about you, and you remain, despite that surrounding, fundamentally alone in the things that matter most, not because no one would be there, but because you have arranged your life so carefully that no one is ever given the chance to find out. Notice what you do when someone comes close to the real thing. When a question lands near where the actual difficulty lives and something in you recognizes the proximity. The pivot is fast. You redirect, you generalize, you say, "It's been a lot," in a tone that signals the subject is closed. Or you laugh in a way that communicates this is not serious. Or you move immediately to the next thing before the previous one could fully land. You are very good at this. Years of practice have made the movement seamless. Most people never notice the pivot has happened. Only you know that it did. You extend grace to others that you will not extend to yourself. When someone you care about is struggling, you do not think less of them for it. You move toward them. You understand without effort that difficulty is part of being human, not evidence of failure. But when it is your difficulty that wants to surface, when it is your weight that wants to be acknowledged, the same grace is absent. Suddenly the difficulty is something to manage, not something to receive. You hold yourself to a standard you would never dream of imposing on anyone you love. This is not strength. This is what old fear looks like when it has had enough time to dress itself in virtue's clothing. Think of the archer who holds the bow, drawn for too long. The bow does not improve from being held under permanent tension. The arm does not grow stronger, it strains. The hand does not steady, it trembles. And when the shot finally comes, if it comes, it no longer carries the precision of a prepared and rested body. It carries the desperation of something that has been under tension far longer than tension was ever designed to be sustained. You have been holding the bow drawn, not because you are disciplined, but because you have forgotten, or perhaps never learned, that putting it down is allowed, that rest is not retreat, that setting something down briefly is not the same as abandoning it. Receiving is not the same as depending. Asking is not the same as surrendering. Letting someone hold something with you is not the same as losing who you are. These distinctions matter. The mind that confuses them will always choose the exhaustion of isolation over the temporary discomfort of being genuinely seen. And that confusion is not a truth about the world. It is a belief about the world built under specific circumstances, still operating as though those circumstances are unchanged. Begin quietly. The next time someone asks how you are doing and the familiar move toward fine begins, pause for 2 seconds, not to perform something different, only to create space between the feeling and the automatic response. In those 2 seconds, ask honestly what is actually true right now. Then decide what to say, not from habit, from a choice. And once you feel the weight honestly, a harder layer becomes visible. The question of what exactly you are protecting. Because here is what most people who never ask for help will not say directly. There is a part of this that is not about strength. There is a part that is afraid, not of the asking itself, not exactly, but of what might come after, of asking and finding that what returns is not what you needed, of making yourself reachable and discovering that the response is smaller than the risk you took, of opening the door finally and finding the room on the other side less than you needed it to be. It is safer to never ask than to ask and find the answer is insufficient. It is safer to maintain the image of not needing than to test that image and discover something painful beneath it, and so you do not test it. You protect yourself from that particular answer by never posing the question, and in that protection you preserve something, the pride, the image, the story in which you are the one who handles things, while quietly surrendering something else, the actual experience of being held by another person, even imperfectly in the difficulty. Here is what changes everything. Refusing to ask for help is not the same as not needing it. Choosing isolation is not the same as being strong. Managing your pain so efficiently that no one can see is not the same as having moved through it. You can be in real difficulty and be very skilled at appearing otherwise. The skill does not diminish the difficulty. It only diminishes the possibility that someone could reach it. Most people who never ask for help live between two positions they believe are the only options. On one side, complete self-sufficiency, carry everything, show nothing, handle it all, maintain the image. On the other, collapse, losing control, becoming a burden, surrendering the respect that capability has built. Two positions, both extremes, and between them nearly invisible because it requires something direct. That, where you can say, I'm finding this difficult, without either suppressing the truth or flooding the room with it. Can you receive care without immediately calculating how to return it? Can you say, I don't know what to do, without following it with a solution so that everyone remains comfortable? Can you let someone sit with you in difficulty without quietly managing their experience of it while your own goes unattended? Can you let another person offer something to you? Genuinely offer, genuinely give, without converting it into a transaction before it has finished arriving? Think of a forest, not the single tree standing in the open field, which is what you have been, but a forest of many trees growing in proximity to one another. What is visible above ground tells only part of the story. Underground, in the root, systems no one ever sees. These trees are connected, sharing nutrients through the soil, sending signals when one is stressed, directing resources toward what is struggling. Not from the weakness of the struggling tree, not from pity, but because this is how living things in a forest survive what solitary living things cannot. Not by endurance alone, but by connection that operates in the dark, in the places no one looks, in the invisible exchanges that make visible strength possible. You have been the lone tree in the open field, strong, standing, visible, and slowly in the rings no one can see, in the places where growth narrowed because every resource was needed for survival, something has been diminishing quietly, without announcement, without anyone knowing to be concerned. Begin quietly. Think of one person whose face comes to mind as someone who would want to know what you are actually carrying right now. Not who would handle it perfectly, not who has earned the right by some standard you have constructed. Simply who would want to know. Let that face be present for a moment. You do not have to reach out today. Only acknowledge that the person exists, that the question, would anyone want to know, has an honest answer, and that the honest answer is not. And once you acknowledge that asking is possible, the next thing becomes clear. Receiving is a skill. And like every genuine skill, it is not built through understanding it. It is built through practice, in small and ordinary moments, long before the big moments make the demand. Most people who have spent years not asking for help have also lost the capacity to receive when care is genuinely offered. They hold the offered thing at arm's length. They minimize immediately. It's not that big a deal, honestly. Don't worry about it. They accept the gesture while keeping the meaning from landing. They thank quickly and redirect before anything real has passed between them. And the exchange completes on the surface while the actual connection, the thing receiving was always supposed to create, does not happen. This is the final and most subtle layer of the armor, because here is what years of self-sufficiency ultimately produces. A person surrounded by people who care, who may be genuinely loved, who remains, despite all of that surrounding, unreachable, at exactly the depth where care could make a difference. The people who would reach in cannot find a place to reach. You have arranged the surface too well. You have been too consistent at appearing fine. And so they believe you, not because you are convincing, but because you have given them nothing to contradict the appearance. You are tired of being the strong one. You may not have said this to anyone. You may not have allowed yourself to say it internally with full honesty. But it is true, and something in you knows it. You are tired of being the person everyone leans toward and no one thinks to reach toward. You are tired of the managing, of the handling, of the handling, of the handaway, of the careful ongoing maintenance of an image that protects everyone from knowing what is actually present inside you. Your suffering is not false. Some wounds are real. The wound of a life spent in capable, careful, invisible isolation. That wound is real. It does not bleed openly. It does not ask for attention. But it is real, and it has been accumulating quietly for a long time. You may not be responsible for how you learned to carry things alone, but you are responsible for what you continue to practice. These are not the same burden. One was placed on you, the other is being maintained by you, and only the second can be released. Think of a lake that has no inflow, no river feeding it, no exchange with what exists beyond its banks. Still water is not the same as clear water. Stillness is not the same as purity. Over time, without what flows in from outside, without the exchange that living water is designed for, the lake loses what made it worth dwelling beside, not from failure, not from any fault in the water itself, but from the long absence of what it was by nature made to receive. You were made to receive as much as you were made to give. The self-sufficiency that looks like completion is often stagnation, wearing the clothing of dignity. Can you practice receiving one small thing this week fully, without deflecting, without minimizing, without balancing the account before the offering is finished? Someone offers to help with something. You say yes, not "it's okay, I've got it," simply yes. And then you let the help be help. You let it count, you let it arrive. You let yourself feel, even briefly, what it is to not carry that particular thing alone. Begin quietly. The next time care is offered, however small, pause before the deflection forms. Let the offer land. Notice what it feels like in the body when another person extends toward you with genuine intention. That sensation is not weakness. It is what connection feels like when it is allowed to be real. And real connection is not earned by managing everything alone. It is made possible by being willing, even slightly, to be reached. Transformation of this kind does not announce itself. It does not arrive in a single conversation where you finally say everything you have been holding. It does not require a dramatic unraveling, a day when the performance collapses and the real thing is suddenly visible. That is not how this works. And it is not what this is asking of you. What it is asking is smaller and harder than that. It is asking you to practice in ordinary moments a different quality of relationship with your own need. To notice before the deflection arrives that deflection is a choice, not a reflex, not a necessity, not the only response available. To pause, however briefly, before the armor settles back into place, and to ask yourself in that pause, is this what I choose, or is this simply what I have always done? You remove the performance of invulnerability, and something more honest becomes possible. Not collapse, not drama, but presence, the presence of a person willing to be known, even slightly, even imperfectly, by the people who are trying to reach them. You release the belief that needing is failure, and genuine strength, the kind that includes knowing when to extend your hand, becomes available, the kind the armor never allowed because the armor was too occupied, proving it was not needed. You stop protecting everyone from the knowledge of your difficulty, and the connection that was always possible between you and the people who care about you has somewhere, finally, to land. You stop being the person who handles everything alone, and you become, slowly and without announcement, someone who is actually known, not by everyone, not in every room, but in the rooms that matter, by the people who were always willing, if only you had let them know there was something to receive. The practitioner who has trained long enough understands something the student cannot yet see. The greatest test of inner steadiness is not whether you can endure alone. Any person can endure alone for a time on what is already stored within them. The test, the real one, is whether what has been built inside is stable enough to be shared, whether it is strong enough that opening it does not destroy it but deepens it. A fortress that can never open its gates is not a fortress. It is a prison, and the difference between them is not the thickness of the walls. It is whether the person inside is there by choice. You are not wrong to protect yourself. You are not wrong to become capable. You are not wrong to build the life you built in the only ways available to you at the time. But you can choose now something different, not the abandonment of who you are, the addition of what was always missing, the capacity to be held as well as to hold, the willingness to be reached as well as to reach, the knowledge carried in the body and not just the mind, that needing something from another person is not a diminishment of you. It is how all living things sustain what is most alive in them. Let your life become the evidence, not the declaration that you have changed, not the conversation where you finally let someone in and close the door before they are fully through it, but the actual daily practice of being slightly more reachable, of letting one true thing be said, of pausing before the pivot, of saying yes when care is offered, instead of managing it politely away. The evidence will be in the quality of your relationships 6 months from now, in the tiredness that is, perhaps slightly less, in the moment when someone asks how you are doing and something in you, just something small, just once, moves toward truth instead of away from it. That is enough. That is exactly enough. You never had to carry all of it alone to prove that you could. You only ever believed you did.